Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Shrine of Anubis. If you're new here, welcome, and if you have been here before, welcome back and nice to see you again. So, what's going on in here? What's popping? Are we gonna hex somebody? No, today's topic is an altar on a budget. So, without further ado, let's just get started because you know how I am. I always ramble a lot. So, if you watch my previous video on whether to have or not have an altar for Anubis, you may know that I gave you a hint on a very simple and minimal altar. However, I wanted to make a separate video to fully address that part, to complement that video, and to also add more information if you are curious on having an altar on a budget, especially if you work with Anubis. Now, this is going to be very simple. It's not specific to him. That's actually up to you to do yourself as you continue to exercise and follow your intuition with him. So, you might know or recognize by some of these elements that this altar is kind of Wiccan in nature, simply because it kind of has the 4 or 5 elements. I don't even know how many of them there are. Whatever. I don't work with the elements. I have some of them in my altar. So as you can see, you know that, for example, fire is not here. Technically, incense, for example. Let's get started with what I have here, and I'll explain to you why I don't work with fire. Spoiler, I may have tried to set my home on fire by hexing somebody, so we don't want that to happen. So, getting started with the things that you need for a very minimal altar, a very simple altar on a budget. You want to dedicate yourself to Anubis or another god or goddess. You want to have an altar because you have the space, you have the people who are open-minded living with you, or you don't have space but you can have something around. People will not bitch about it to you in your home. Whatever the situation may be that favors you having an altar, you may not necessarily want to spend a lot of money. And first of all, you don't need to go big with an altar if you are unable to. And something that I've noticed is that they can get angry themselves at you if they see you trying to get things out of thin air and pretty much stretching yourself thin, so to speak. And so because of this, I wanted to address this in this video, which I kind of did on the previous one, on how you can have a very simple altar on a budget and work your way up as you move on in life, as you continue to prosper and be successful and all that good stuff. But let's assume that you are a beginner and you want to start with something, but you don't know what, you don't know where, you don't know what you need, if this is necessary or needed or not. It depends. No altar is the same. My altar will differ from yours and from your friend or from your teacher if you have one, or mentor. So do not compare yourself and your altar to the altars of others, first of all. Second, if you want to get started with an altar and you want to work with the elements, you can do so. This is only an example for you to give you an idea, but in the end, this is only to inspire you to come up with your own ideas of what to add or include in your altar. So maybe you're not interested in having all the elements, but you probably want to have an altar that's air focused because that's your favorite element, or it's very prominent in your birth chart, astrological birth chart, or what have you, whatever the reason. This will give you a little suggestion or inspiration on how to get started. So, the first thing I added to my altar 10 years ago was incense sticks. Simply because incense sticks represent the air element, it's a masculine energy. So I wanted to add air because I love incense, not necessarily working with the element, but simply because I really enjoy the incense. So incense was one of the first elements that I added into my altar. So the incense in this case, to me, for my altar, represents the air. For you, you can interpret it as being a symbol of fire, simply because you light it up in order to burn it. So it depends on how you wish to interpret the incense stick or incense cone or resin. I'm not that fancy, so I don't use resin. Uh, but that was one of the first elements that I added into my altar at the time when I was exploring paganism, mostly focusing on Wicca, which is a modern, I wouldn't call it religion, but it's a modern practice. And so a lot of people who want an alternative path aside from being a Christian, they become Wiccans because they love nature. They like the Wiccan read of, do no harm but take no shit, or whatever threefold law bullshit they have. I don't know. It's been 10 years since I was a Wiccan. Okay, so the first thing was incense as air. For you, it might be fire. It depends. So the next thing up, I have two things here. So I have my smoky quartz in here. Can you guys see it? Maybe, maybe not. It's way too reflective. I apologize for that. So I do have a smoky quartz in my altar to represent the earth element, of course. Because I am also a huge fan of crystals, I also decided to add one of them into my altar because I love crystals. So, in a nutshell, having an altar is to have a sacred space or place where you have things that bring you joy and help you connect with your own inner spiritual self, and of course with your guides, angels, your gods and goddesses, and your ancestors, everybody basically. So you do have things in your altar that you enjoy, that you love, that you feel a connection to, that also help you to connect with them, to have that sacred space with sacred communication and interaction and connection with them. So smoky quartz, I decided to put it on my altar because Anubis loves dark stones, and this is a decent size, so it sits right next to his two statues, actually. I try to keep my altar minimal. I have a shit ton of crystals. And I'm sure that you might be able to relate. However, I cannot fit them all in my altar. So I have to keep it simple and minimal. So smoky quartz it is. I may have black obsidian somewhere and red jasper, those very grounded, earthy stones and crystals. Uh, he loves dark stones and also grounding stones, like, for example, tiger's eye, red tiger's eye, red jasper, carnelian, not so much. I don't have it in my altar, but those are some of the stones that he likes. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but he also loves black obsidian, black tourmaline, hematite, smoky quartz, of course, like this one that I am holding here right now, looking like a potato. So feel free to tune into what Anubis wants on the altar if you work with him or whoever you work with, because they might suggest you something different. Okay, so I'm gonna put it right here very carefully because my microphone is super sensitive. So the next thing up is a skull. And so you might be wondering, why do I have two earth elements in two earth symbols in my altar. It's because I love skulls. Okay. And because of this, I don't really work with all the elements. I only work with the ones that I resonate with the most. And so earth elements and air air elements are two of them that I resonate with a lot, which is funny because I am a water sign myself, and my birth chart, my astro chart is actually water dominant, but it's divided because my second most dominating element is fire. And so having earth symbols in my altar helps me to ground both sides of me. I can be very polarizing. And because of this, Pisces is a tricky sign. I am already polarizing on my own. So it doesn't help to also have another half from my astro chart be fire and the other half be watery. So I use earth symbols in my altar to ground me. So this is why I tell you, don't feel like you need to have all the elements in your altar, especially if you're not even a Wiccan, because it's not necessary. These are just key points or guides for you to become inspired from in order to customize your own altar. So the reason why I have skulls is because they remind me of Anubis and Hades. So, and other underworld deities that I work with. So skulls remind me of all of them. But at the same time, it reminds me of the fragility of life, right? Like we're all dying a bit more every day. If you have a shit diet like I do, well, I'm dying faster. I mean, who knows? So having a skull in my altar helps me to be aware even more than I already am that I'm going to die one day, which I don't think I need a reminder because I've always had it in the back of my head since I was a kid. Every single day, I think my family is going to die. That is a trauma that I've had since a kid. I don't know why. It might explain why I have them now with me because I've always thought about death as a kid. So having a skull helps me to remember to do my best and to be my best in life. Be my best in life in the sense of try not to be an asshole unnecessarily to people unless they try me. But also it goes deeper than that, of course. I'm not going to get too much into it because it's kind of personal. So those are the few things that I can share with you. One, it helps me to remember more than usual that I'm going to die one day and that I should strive to be the best and to do the best that I can and to be of service to everybody. And second, it reminds me of them. It reminds me of them. It helps me to connect with them. And it's also a good symbol to have if you want to have something in your altar that reminds you of nature and the cycles of life and death and how it's all a circle and how it all continues to happen over and over again. Um, of course, you can always come up with your own interpretations for each of these symbols, but these are just some of my ideas as to why I have them in my altar on the first place. Now, you might be wondering, why the fuck do I have a singing bowl here? The reason why I have a singing bowl here is because if you're allergic to incense, if you cannot have incense, resin, or incense cones, you can have a singing bowl in your altar to represent the air element due to the vibration. And I'm not going to sound this, if that's how you say it, because the microphone is super sensitive, so it's going to deafen you. It's not properly adjusted the microphone for high pitched sounds. so I'm not going to do so. So if you are not a fan of incense sticks or cones or what have you, you do have the option to have a singing bowl on your altar to represent air. Now, what is a bottle of rum doing in this video? Okay, so I'm going to cover the fire element soon, but I want to get into the water aspect. And I know this doesn't look like water at all, but hear me out, hear me out. Sometimes the gods or goddesses may ask you for a drink. This can be whiskey, rum, vodka, beer, or it can be as simple as water. Sometimes they may ask you for juice or Coca-Cola. I've heard somewhere that that is possible. And honestly, don't feel weirded out if they ask you for something that you've never heard about before from other people. Usually, again, they might get bored of the same offerings, right? So listen to your intuition and also do what you can with what you can. I feel that many people feel bad for offering different things. For example, tea or chocolate. I spent 1 year offering chocolate to Anubis and Hades, and was it cranberry juice? No. Was it? I have no idea. I kept offering them the same juice and chocolate for about a year. Hershey chocolates. Now I remember. And it was embarrassing, of course, but they didn't seem to care. They didn't seem to mind. They were actually very, very pleased with the offerings. And it's because I offer them with so much respect and love and devotion that they enjoyed receiving that energy from me that I infused into the offerings. So don't feel like you have to go big with the offering. Now, I would not count rum as a water element for your altar, but it could be an alternative if you do not want to offer water for whatever reason. If you don't want to have water in your altar, I don't know why, but it's a matter of preference at this point. If you don't want to have water to represent that element in your altar, you may want to have some sort of alcoholic drink, unless you are not a drinker or a miner. In which case, I would suggest that you offer tea, juice, water, or some other alternative to represent the water element. I would say that rum and other types of alcoholic drinks count more as spirits. So it's kind of tricky on whether I should say that you should have it if you want to represent the spirit aspect of everything. Kind of like the pentagram with the 5 points and such. You know, you have the typical 4 elements and then there's the spirit element going on. So if you want to represent spirit in some way, you may want to have one of these, but it's optional and it's not necessary. Your statue might actually represent spirit. So if you have it, if you have a statue of Anubis or another deity. So again, not everybody can afford a $40 statue or a $30 statue. So don't feel like you need to have everything together right away when you're just getting started. So you can always print out a picture of Anubis or your deity. I saw smoke flying somewhere around here on the preview, but anyways, you do not need to go big right away when you're just getting started. And something that I want to bring up to you is that they will accept what you have to offer to them. And something that I want to speak now in regards to the elements. We have a missing element. Where is fire? I do not work with fire. I used to, not any longer, after a huge scare that I had with a working that I was doing. So You might want to have a tea light candle somewhere in your altar. If you can't really have large, thick candles, a tea light is fine, but not necessarily. You can always have like those LED lights, those LED candles that are, fake, but they look kind of realistic. If you really want to have the symbolism of fire in your altar, if you really want to have a figure of a candle somewhere, you can always use one of those LED candles for your altar if you don't like to work with fire. Again, you don't need to have all four elements and the fifth element being spirit. You don't have to have all of them together in your altar. Just work with what you've got and what would you resonate with. And if you really need to, unless you are a Wiccan who wants to work with all the elements, but it's not necessary. Remember, this is just a tiny video, tiny, quote unquote, on how to have a very minimal altar on a budget. So, I think I was able to clear up how you can have an altar on a budget. Again, very simple, very minimal. You won't break your budget. Halloween is just around the corner. You can go to the dollar store, get a skull. I think this one was from the dollar store. I don't know, but I have seen the skulls, very pretty skulls actually, in the dollar store. You might be able to find them at Michael's. I think it was Michael's that he got it. I have no idea. You might be able to find it at some store for crafting things. So again, you don't have to spend $50 on a quartz skull when you can just have one made of plastic or foam or something to have on your altar. Again, it's all about finding alternatives and budget-friendly options for you so that you can have your altar without breaking your bank. So incense sticks, they can be very cheap. You can find packages for like $5 or $3 for like 20 incense sticks or something like that. So singing bowls can vary. This one actually cost me about $30. And that was quite pricey. And so the rum itself was actually $15. So there are some things that can be a little bit pricey. Again, just work with what you've got. And of course, if you want to have a representation of your god or goddess, you don't need to have a $50 statue with you. You can simply print out a picture of your god or goddess and put it on a tiny frame that you can get at a dollar store and put it up on your altar, and that's it. If you don't have access to a printer, draw them. As simple as that. And I know, because you're probably thinking, oh yeah, you say that because art is simple for you. Actually, I don't draw, but I would still dare to do a painting of Anubis if I did not have a statue of him. I would actually attempt to paint him. And that's another thing. They don't give a shit if you're an artist. It's all about intention and devotion and love in your heart and respect and having the desire to connect with them. And when you pour your love and attention to that painting, if you do decide to go that route, they will feel the love as you attempt to draw them or paint them, to have a representation of them in your altar. So there are many budget-friendly options, sometimes even free options that you can do in order to have an altar on a budget. So I feel that that covers it. If I have forgotten something, let me know down below in the comment section. Also, let me know what you think of this video. And third, what other suggestions you have for having an altar on a budget. I am very curious and always open to knowing and learning about your ideas and what you think. And if you've also have an altar on a budget, let me know what other tips and tricks and hacks you have. Feel free to share down below so that other people can also see more options than what I just talked about in this video, which I was not expecting it to be super long. My apologies for that. So that's it for this video. I hope that I was able to cover everything. Again, let me know down below if you have any other suggestions on how to have an altar on a budget. Before I let you go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click on the bell button, and click on See All to get all the notifications of any future uploads that I'll be making on this channel. So I wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye!